you about your own playing. And if you have a crappy guitar that you're always compensating for, you're missing out on that sense of like, this is what it feels like when a guitar responds to you. So you're going to get better playing the guitar. That's what I felt when I picked up the Zeidler. It was like, oh, this guitar is kicking my ass because it's just showing everything that I'm not playing strong comes out really not strong. You know what I mean? Everything that you kind of hesitate about. And hearing on that recording, I think like it had a bigger sound, but at the same time, it hadn't opened up as much yet, and I hadn't, it just was a while before I felt more comfortable playing this guitar. It takes a while. As you're developing, you're also developing the relationship with the instrument, and the instrument is changing as it's getting played. But I think really it's mind over matter. Like it's more about what you're trying to play and what you're hearing in your head and the choices you make musically, and you're adjusting to how the instrument feels. But I've never been one of these guys that can pick up any guitar and play it. Like I'll just pick up a guitar and play a couple notes. Say, I would rather not play a whole tune on this guitar. Like I just don't. But I've seen people just pick up a guitar and just they don't care. And I've never been able to do that just because I had close relationships with my instrument, even when they were, not perfect,
Yeah, man.
But I want
that.
the feeling. I want the tension that I want, the resistance that I'm expecting to have. That's the only way I can get into any kind of phrasing or any kind of nuances. Like what's pushing back on me is, what I've engineered it to do. In terms of action or the string gauge or just whatever, the resistance to what you're giving it,
Yeah, and maybe that's a good transition to Will's question, because like playing the Zeidler, I'm sure brought out a lot of just the sound that you're getting on your instrument, this way you approach solo guitar too. I know Will had some questions about that as well.
Yeah. Pete, we've never got to formally meet, but I mean, needless to say, I feel like I know you inside and out with how much music of yours I've listened to. I discovered you listening to Something's Burnin', and of course Signs of Life, and the Melvin Rhine stuff. Like your version of Love for Sale, I totally started playing Love for Sale in like 6/8 for a solid couple years, just because of that stellar album. Maybe just to hone in a little on your solo playing, and we actually have a track queued up from your solo album that we've all listened to a bunch. But the sound that you get and your dynamic playing and the way you when you strike a chord versus when you're playing single melodies, just like to pick your brain a little bit about your connection to the tunes, to the standards playing solo.
I mean, I'd always been afraid of playing solo to the point of like living in fear if someone would say, okay, why don't we just have guitar intro, and I would just be like, just me. Like I would really live in fear of having to play. If someone said, 8 bars, give me 8 bars, 4 bars, slightly less fear, but still, even just any intro where I had to play by myself, I was in mortal fear about it, just because I didn't feel comfortable in that. I felt so exposed and naked, and so over the years I tried to work out some tunes and just little, not chord and melody, but just little ways of treating a tune, but only for myself, and would really not go out of my way not to have to play by myself in public. And then more than 10 years ago, Smalls was having these early kind of like happy hour solo piano gigs, and it was a thing where all the piano players in town were kind of playing from like 6 to 7:30 or something like that. And so I just asked Spike one day, how come you never have solo guitar? And he's like, I don't know. No one ever asked. And, you want to do it? And I was kind of like, I wasn't even thinking of myself. I was just kind of like, hey, how come you're hooking up all the piano players? How about you give a guitar? Not even for myself. And he was like, yeah, you can do it if you want. And so then I, thought about it. And I was like, well, I should try to do it. I should try to confront the thing that scares me the most. And I figured, maybe if I can get through a whole set, then 8 bars, 4-bar intro won't terrify me as much, because it'll just be a small percentage of that. So I just tried to do it, and I didn't really go with much of a plan, except a couple of little arrangement type things that I had worked out on some tunes, partially worked out. I always had like most of the melody kind of a way to play it, but then I'd always feel like, well, I can't work out a whole, like I don't know what's next. I'm going to have to improvise at some point and try to play by myself. So that was the whole thing about that was just trying to, the sonic void of playing by yourself, where you don't hear anything if you're not playing. And really what it did was make me appreciate the conversation I get to have with people even more, and just try to look at the ways of what can I do by myself that I can't really do with other people, instead of trying to play by myself and feel the whole time that wishing people were there, which I did. I mean, a lot of times I remember doing it one time, and just like there happened to be a clock at that time on the wall. Like I remember looking up there and like thinking like, oh man, I'm not up for this today. I really should have called a bass player. Like I'm not going to make it. I wonder how much time has gone by. I looked back and like 6 minutes had gone by. It was like 2 tunes, and I just felt so demoralized. Like, what am I doing? I have no business doing this. I can't.
Well, I gotta say, man, it doesn't sound that way.
Well,
when
you're very nice to say that, but I mean, I remember feeling, and every time I did it, there'd be like, for 8 bars, I felt like, okay, this could work. Maybe I could do if I could just. I don't know what was happening. Was I just concentrating in those 8 bars and not, listening to the static that was going on, or the, whatever else was going on in my head? I always felt encouraged enough to try it again, and so the record came about just because. Spike was recording groups, and the group coming in after me was going to record. So the mics were set up. And Spike was like, why don't we just record it? I'll just tell the engineer to come in, for your set at 6 o'clock and just turn on the microphones. I was like, okay, cool. Well, there's nothing to lose. I'm just not planning on making a record. But if you have the things there and it's just digital, doesn't matter. It's not like tape. So I just did it. And we ended up doing, like, they had to record for 2 nights. So I did the 2 nights of the early group, switched with someone else, so I would have 2 nights in a row to keep and just try to get some stuff. But I remember thinking after the first night, and even the second night too, like, whatever, if I ever make a solo record, I'll do it in the studio, and it's a little more contained, and I can just stop and start, and it's a little more.
Well, man, we love it.
Less crazy. But then, as it turned out, I didn't listen to it, but I did like this change my mind to tweet it out, just because it's a strange story, but I had to get a root canal. And and that was my, like I was kind of like, Spike, the timing of it was just that Spike was like, have you listened to those tapes yet? He sent me the things. Like, I'm not going to, I don't think so, man, never mind. He said, well, my friend Yves was here, our friend Yves Broqui, a great guitar player from Paris, and he, I let him hear a couple tracks. He said, it's really good. I'm like, okay, great, thanks, Yves, what a nice guy. And then like 2 days later, I got this terrible toothache, and then I went to the dentist a couple days later, and they said, you need a root canal. And then meanwhile, another call from Spike was like, have you listened to those things yet? And I'm like, he's like, Yves will listen to it if you don't want to. I'm like, yeah, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe I can get my root canal, and that will pay for the root canal. And then instead of having to listen to it, I'll just get the root canal. And Yves will, producer credit or whatever, he didn't end up wanting to be, but like Yves can just choose the takes. So that's how I justified putting out that record. It wasn't like I need to make a solo statement. It was more like, I have to go to the dentist.
I have a root
so
canal.
I just looked at it like I absolved myself from choosing takes because I had the experience of the root canal, which was bad enough, but still preferable to listening to 2 nights of solo guitar. So that's why it's a record. So the people like it. I just, Spike, I knew it was super raw and like, but maybe people could like it, or not raw enough, man, depending on what your perspective is. But like, I was just
We're glad you released it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, man. That's the story behind it. And I still try to play solo and confront that challenge a little bit and try to get more comfortable with it. But it's really hard. It's a really difficult thing that makes you address your touch on the instrument and for better or for worse, it's out there.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's just so much language and time and groove. It's all in there. Thank you for all the music that you've given us, because it's
Yeah, Pete, I echo that, and that solo stuff is really badass. We appreciate your humble nature, but let's give credit where it's due here.
Amen.
I have just a few last little questions for you. And again, thank you so much for making the time for us here. It's really exciting for us to have you on our podcast. Can you give me like some of your desert island jazz guitar records? Like if you were stranded, what would be the top 5, top 10 on your list right off your head?
Wow. Well, I mean, yeah, I can only go on the ones that I would want with me for comfort. Like the ones that started me off in a way. But certainly Smoking at the Half Note with Wes. All the Charlie Christian, especially the live admittance stuff with Charlie Christian. Yeah. That's still inspiring. I mean, always gets me. I remember Jim Hall talking about that too. Like he talked about hearing that his Charlie Christian solo with Benny Goodman, the Grand Slam on that blues, and remembered the first time he heard it on the radio. And he says he still gets the same feeling when he heard it, 60 years later or whatever. Just like how music can just work its way into your consciousness. Yeah. So while I'm talking about Jim Hall, I would definitely say The Bridge, if that's considered a jazz guitar record, just because he's playing on that. Counts. Plus Sonny, was just blew my head open. And Kenny Burrell and Coltrane, that was a huge thing. Those dates with Tommy Flanagan, and most of it was with Jimmy Cobb, Kenny Burrell and Train playing together, and just that affected me. Grant Green, there's so many Grant Green records that I love. I would Matador is my, and Solid was the kind of the first Grant I heard. That record's Solid with Joe Henderson and Spalding, and same rhythm section, McCoy, Elvin, and Crenshaw. So, and of course the Grant stuff with organ. Of course, George Benson Cookbook. It's actually It's Uptown was the one I knew better than Cookbook of George Benson with Lonnie and Ronnie Cuber. George is playing on Willow Weep for me. Like those are like the, those are the things, and so much else of players that have affected me was more based on experiences seeing them live, like seeing Joe Pass live that one time, and the guys like more recently in the past 25, 30 years that I've gone to see a lot, like Schofield and Bill Frisell, and just like all the guys, my peers too, so
that's great.
But for records though, it would have to be the ones that just kind of to take me back to that place, because I always enjoy hearing how they sound different to me as my ears have changed, and I can hear other parts of the music better. Whereas when I was just studying them, I was so focused on the guitar. I mean, not really. I mean, I love Wynton Kelly and the feeling of the rhythm section on Smoking at the Half Note, but I can just I was focused on the guitar because that was what was, blowing my mind in terms of what's he doing, but now it's just good to hear stuff over as your ears change,
Well, listen, I really want to be respectful of your time. We could talk to you literally for another couple of hours, but we're going to try to wrap it up here. And it's just been such a pleasure speaking with you, Peter. Thank you for doing
thank you guys.
This podcast. You've really long inspired all of us and many other guitar players out there. So for people that are listening, go buy albums from Peter Bernstein. He's got lots of great stuff out there, tons of recordings he's on. You can purchase a lot of that information is on his website, peterbernsteinmusic.com. Peter, it's been an honor. Thank you for joining us on High Action.
Thanks for having me, and keep what you guys are doing. Keep up with that. I was telling John after we, it's nice to see, and it's strange for me to feel like, an elder to you guys, but because I always feel, we're all in it together trying to learn how to play, but it's just nice to see it being perpetuated on such a high level, what you guys are doing. So,
thanks for all you've given us, man.
Be well. Have a great week, Pete. See you around, man.
We'll be in touch, Pete, for sure.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Late, man. See ya.